Hi, welcome to the Ivory Egg Technical Bulletin. In this video we're going to look at the Gira S1. The S1 is a networking device which is used to create a secure remote access into a KNX installation. It's designed to work primarily with the Gira X1 and the Gira home server, but can also be used to access ETS and other network devices on the system. It creates a permanent secure connection using HTTP with SSL or TLS encryption. And it does that by connecting directly up to the Gira portal. It's completely independent from any ISP or router. You don't need to make any changes to the router, such as opening ports on the firewall. It doesn't matter if that router's swapped out or the ISP has changed. You can also manage connections remotely. So if you've got the app being used maybe for the home server and that's connected remotely, via the Gira portal, you're able to manage that connection. You can set up email notifications from KNX from when the state of certain objects change on the KNX system. You can have that trigger an email. You can also link it to if this then that. It's a very convenient and secure way to provide remote access and removes a lot of the complications that we've had to deal with in the past. If we have a look at the system topology, on the right we have some devices on the network, on the KNX network, and then you would have a X1 or a home server for visualization, and then the S1 sits between there and the IP router. When the S1's plugged in, it automatically connects through the router using an encrypted message format up to the Gira device portal. Once you've set yourself up as a user on the device portal, you can enter the code from the side of the S1, and that associates that S1 to your account. That means nobody else can get to it. It is now your S1. And every single time the S1 is turned on or the system's reset, it makes that connection up to the device portal and holds that connection open, which is why you can always have remote access. If you want to access the system remotely, either programming via your laptop, might be the X1 via GPA or home server via Experta, or KNX via ETS, you connect via the device portal and that will redirect you to the home. In the same way with the apps, you'd put the login details for the Gira device portal and then that redirects you back down to the S1 into the project. When it comes to configuring the system, there's some settings to be made in both ETS and also via the device portal. So in ETS, you've got your normal connection settings, physical addressing, that kind of thing. And then you've got the notification setup. Here you can define different object types. There's up to 10 notifications, so 10 objects can be tracked, and you change the object type and then you're able to add filters to it. So it might be with a 1-bit value, it might be you only trigger the notification when the value is 1. You might do something a bit more complicated, like with a temperature value, only send the notification if the temperature is above a certain range. Maybe if the temperature is above 24 degrees, you send the notification. Or you can even use the text data point type, and might be something like air conditioning, where you could say if the text matches an error code, use that to send a specific notification. You set up the priority and the category of the notification, and that's what you use on the device portal to link it to different email types. And you can define the subject and the text of the email or of the notification. That text can also include the value of the object. You're even able to add an attachment into the email. That happens by adding a URL to the notification, and when the notification is triggered, it will download a file from that address, from that URL. It might be a camera image, for example, and that will also be attached to the email. As you can see on the right, the objects you have available, at the very bottom you have the notification trigger, which is the one that I've set up, but you also have a lot of control over the device. You can enable or disable remote access. You can enable or disable specific groups of remote access. You can categorize some of the connections as residents or as installers and control them separately. You can also see the portal connection. You can find out how many remote connections, if anything's enabled. What you're able to do with that is give the homeowner a button within the property that they push to enable remote access if you want to do some programming, but they always have a permanent on connection for their remote access via their apps. It's very functional, it's very easy to set up. The rest of the settings are made in the device portal. In here you can see the status of the S1. You get links. Now links are where the S1 has scanned the local network and provides you with the IP address of any devices. Anything that you could log in via its IP address to configure it. It might be a network attached storage or an IP camera. Because the S1 is able to see them, you can actually use the device portal to access them. So you log into the portal and then go into links, click on that link, and you're able to configure and change settings on that device. You've got the notification set up, which is where you can see what's happening on the device. You can see its state, whether it's on or off, how long the connection's been up for. It's not where you configure the actual message forwarding and the notifications. That's done in the configuration section. And there you can say which groups of notifications go to which emails. You can also link off to if this then that as another application. Under the device data tab, you have some information about the device, including its data consumption. Depending on how you've configured the device and if you're using the apps, etc., you may have quite a lot of data going between the connection. That's something to consider if your property is running on maybe on a 4G router. There are some limits with the device portal in terms of how much data you can transfer a month, but they're quite high, so it shouldn't really be an issue. Under the configuration section, you have remote access, and that's where you can activate certain paths of remote access. If you wanted to use Gira home server, when the app opens, you need to put in a activation key, and in the remote access tab, that's where you set that up. So you set up individual access details for the different apps and the different remote connections. You can also delete them and manage them remotely. Message forwarding we've already covered, and then under portal users is where you're able to give other people access into the portal with their own login details so they can get to links to other devices. All in all, it's quite an easy workflow to configure. Everything's in quite logical places. It's presented in a very clean way on the website, so you'll be up and running with it in no time. When we come to configuring the actual remote access, I've got 3 examples here. On the left, we have the home server. When you create a new profile on the home server app, it now asks you if you want to use a remote access module for that remote connection or not. If you go with remote access module, that's the Gira S1. You give it a name, which is just the name that the profile has within the app. You give it the local address of the home server, and then you use that remote access ID and activation code that you've set up on the portal. You give it the standard access details for the home server, and it's done. If you're local in the property, it will connect using the LAN. If you're remote, it'll connect via the portal. But as far as the user's concerned, they won't see any difference. It happens very quickly, and there's no longer a need to open a separate VPN or open ports and do port forwarding. Exactly the same on the X1. On the far right there, you have the same setup. You put the IP address in of the X1, and then you use the remote access ID and the activation code. In the middle, we have the S1 Windows client, which is a little client you can run on Windows. And in there, you can set up access to the portal, which creates that remote connection. It's very similar to a VPN software. When that's enabled and when you turn it on and log in, you then have a remote connection between the laptop and the portal, and then the S1 and the property. So if you open ETS, you will automatically see any devices that are on the remote network. You can append a code to the remote connection, so S1 for example, and then in ETS you'll easily be able to see which are the remote connections and the local connections. Once you've got the Windows client running, you can also use that to link to other devices that are on the network. It's very simple and just makes that connection just very stable. It makes everything easy. To make it even easier, you can use the GPA for remote access. Gira Project Assistant is used for configuring the X1. If you go to the project scope, you can enable the remote access module. And then you put in the activation key and the device name, the license that you create on the portal. And then you've got a connect and disconnect button at the top right. That enables you to connect to that remote project very simply. You can use that within GPA to program to an X1, to use Action Center to connect to other devices in the system, maybe G1s or the S1 itself. Use that to update firmware and make changes to those devices. But once you've connected, it also makes those connections available for ETS. You don't need to use the Windows client if you're using GPA. ETS will automatically see any KNX network devices on the remote system. They will just have a GPA before the network name. So it's very, very simple, and if you're already using GPA for the X1, it makes sense to also use that for your remote connection to the system. That's it for this quick summary. The S1 is a fantastic device. It makes remote access really simple, removes a lot of the headaches and hang-ups that we've had in the past in terms of VPNs or some of those more risky ways of providing remote access, such as using port forwarding. All of that is just taken care of, so you're able to provide a very safe and secure installation, but still get all the convenience that modern users need. If you've got any comments or questions, please post them in the comment section below, and look out for the next Ivory Egg video. Thank you very much.